Hi and welcome to today's show, the second episode of the 7 income streams that are gonna make you a millionaire within the next 10 years. Today we're gonna talk about interest. Now, in the first episode, which aired last Tuesday, if you missed that, you can click on the very bottom here, then you can click on the last show where we talked about the first income stream that millionaires use. We talked about your own work. Today we're going to talk about the second one, which is one that we are all very familiar with, and that is interest. Now here you will already see that compared to the active income, that where you work and you get paid on your time, interest, the principle behind it is you give someone money and that person pays you back that money, or that institution pays that money back over time. You prefix that, and there's always a little on top, and that is what we call the interest. Now in today's society, we most know interest from traditional banks. Now if you look at your own bank, they probably have a prefixed interest, which at the moment is at a historical low. You probably noticed from the news, from the media. This is set by institutions all over the world. You have in the US, you have the Fed. In Europe, you have a European Central Bank. And if you're following the news a little bit, you will hear that at the moment, there's literally 0% interest. Now, this is a historical low because if I look, for example, my mom always tells me the story when she was at my age, she received almost 10% in interest. Now, this is really unbelievable. And but today these times are over. However, still, interest is a very important part, and we're gonna explain now how you can use this as a second income stream to become a millionaire. First and foremost, you need to understand that it seems that an interest is a very safe way to put your money, and you always want to distinguish, is an investment, and interest is definitely an investment, is it a risky investment or is it a safe investment? The risk comes with how much can you control it, how much can you influence it. It depends on, of course, what are the chances that you're going to lose your principal? What are the chances that you're going to lose your money? Well, in Europe especially, if you give up to 100,000 euros to any certified bank, it's pretty much backed by the European Central Bank. Now, this backing is a very theoretical backing. It would only come into place if one bank goes down. Now, if in Europe there would be a whole crisis and all the banks would go down, I mean, your money's gone. Pretty much your money, it's not going to be worth much anyways anymore. But that's a pretty important backing. So keep that in mind. For many of you, this is not going to be an issue at the moment, but over time you might go over that limit. Now, how much money should you put into a bank? How much money should you use for the second income? Now, there's a general rule, and this is a very rule of thumb. That is, take your age. For example, let's say you are 25 years old, and this would be the percentage that you put into rather safe investments, and the other 75% you can use into more speculative, but more maybe long-term investments where over time they're gonna balance out. Now, the older you get, let's say 75, well, here you should have most of your money in quite safe investments, which makes sense because you have to live off that, right? Where here you still have time to grow. Now, other than traditional banks, there are other things where you can put your money. For example, I don't keep much of my money in physical offline banks. I'm going to give you some very good links on that. I use online banks where I can keep my money. And why do I do that? Because they give me slightly better rates with the same benefits. My only downside of those is that I cannot go to a physical bank and talk to a clerk, but most of the times I don't need that anyways. I prefer to have everything accessed on my computer. Now, if you still prefer to talk to a human person, that's great. Then you want to keep your money there as well. That's totally up to you. But with online banking apps, I think online, and you get better deals. One thing that I would personally stay away from, and I could not advise you to do, is that you make a so-called time deposit, where you keep your money in, for example, 24 months, and then in return get better interest rates. The reason why, in my opinion, this doesn't make so much sense is because I would keep money in a bank more for a safe backup. And that means I love to have at least 3, better 6, maybe even 12 months of running cost or of living cost as a backup. So that means if you need, let's say, 1,500 euros or US dollars per month, then I love to have at least 4,500 euros or $4,500, better 9,000, or maybe you can even do 18,000, just an example, as an easy accessible, it means instantly accessible backup. Now, if you are watching this and you're like, whoa, I cannot have this much money, where am I gonna get this money from? Remember the lesson that we talked about in the episode before? You always want to take away a chunk of money, maybe 10%, 11%, doesn't matter, at the beginning of the month from your paycheck, and use that to fill this up as part of your safe backup. Now, interest rates, for example, at the moment I just checked, I'm getting around 1.2% per year. Now, this is historically really low, and that is already high because actually most banks, and if you're, for example, in Switzerland and you're dealing with Swiss francs, you have negative interest rates. Now, this is a total different topic and we could talk about for hours on why there's negative interest rates in Switzerland. Anyway, so at the moment, this is how much you're gonna get. Now, of course, I'm also gonna tell you some tips and tricks. One thing that I'm also using, and I get some very significant interest from there, and that's very important, of course a bit more riskier, is B2B lending. Now, this is also interest, but this is more risky. How does the B2B lending work? There's different platforms that you can use, and I'm not interested to advertise for any of those, so that's why I'm not going to give you any names on this here. All I'm trying to do is I'm telling you that there's B2B lending. That means you as a person take, for example, 1,000 euros or 1,000 US dollars, and instead of lending this to one person that would be too risky, you split it up and you lend it to 100 different people. A platform does this for you. They take a cut, and every one of these people pays, for example, I don't know, 25% interest back to you. You have a prefixed dropout rate that you calculate in already. For example, let's say you know 15% drop out, and you're left with a net interest of 10% of interest that comes back to you per year. Now, just Google B2B lending. There's some really large companies out there. Research them, that's really important, because we don't want to give any tips here. It's just that I want to point this out. Let me just check my notes here if I have covered everything. In income number 2, really important to summarize this up. Use money that you make in income number 1, take out a cut, put it into income number 2. Depending on whether you use banks, this is going to be a bit safer and easily accessible. Personally, I would stay away from time deposits where you tie up your money over a certain period of time. Why? Because to me, then I wouldn't put it in there. I would use different other investments. I would use other income streams, especially 3 to 7 that we will talk about in the next episodes. You can take a bit of a riskier way. Now, be aware that this is riskier, and this is the B2B lending that has become more and more interesting over the last couple of years. Simply go on Google and Google B2B lending. Look at the links below. We're going to put some in for some online banks, also for the last episode, and I hope you get some great value out of this. If you do, thank you for all the feedback from the last time, and share with us, like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our page. We have some really great value and tips on there, and see you next Tuesday. Subscribe to our newsletter and see you next Tuesday for the next episode. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Cheers from Hong Kong.